listen, never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Getting on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
I say it every time. I say it every single time. But this one, I was like, I had in the holster. I was just like, okay, just wait. Let the guy do his job. Let him do his job. Just wait. And then, boom, Sam Dykstra. There's absolutely nobody I'd rather talk to on the planet than you. Wow.
Thanks for having me, Rob. I mean, your timing is impeccable. When you reached out this week, you're like, would you be willing to come and talk on the show? And I was like, Wednesday would be best. Wednesday, when things start to really calm down a little bit in my world. But that means we have a ton to talk about, which I will always gladly do here with you.
It's much like, you ever see the movie Misery?
Yes.
Okay. You know, when he finishes the book, he smokes a cigarette. Like, this is basically your cigarette.
Sure. We'll go with that. I'll ride that metaphor for sure. And nothing else from that movie. That part.
No. I'm not putting a block of wood in between your ankles and putting a sledgehammer on your. No. Anyway, all right. Let's get right to it. Let me just ask you this, because we're gonna go through the trade deadline. You know, I think the top 5 guys that you felt like were moved at the deadline. And we'll also get into, you guys just came out with re-ranking the farm systems. But overall, as we sit here right now, having gone through all of what you went through, what is the thing that stuns you the most? What is the thing that you're sitting here and you're like, man, now that I'm sitting here, now that I'm just able to catch my breath a little bit, that was really surprising.
I think the thing is, and this kind of is going to encapsulate so much what we're going to talk about today, is just how many chips the San Diego Padres have pushed into the middle of the table, and how all in they are on this window. And they should be. There's every reason they should be. Getting Mason Miller back, is a big chip, somebody that they can put in the back of their bullpen for a long time. But those guys just aren't available. I get it. But AJ Preller, he's always a seller, or he's always a buyer. He's always willing to trade prospects. Sometimes it works out pretty well. Sometimes you trade away James Wood and Mackenzie Gore for a few years of Juan Soto. But when Juan Soto is available, you go get Juan Soto. When Mason Miller is available, you go get Mason Miller, because flags fly forever. And, we're seeing right now they're neck and neck with the Dodgers. They very well could win that division with the best bullpen in baseball. But having to put together the Padres top 30 and realize just how quickly that level falls apart, or that system falls apart in terms of excitement with prospects, they are all in on the here and now. That is for dang sure.
Where did they go when you from what to what in your farm system rankings?
So they, at the beginning of the season, they were 25th, and now they are 30th.
Oh, okay.
So they slid. I mean, there's nowhere else for them to go, right? They started out.
By the way, 25th with a top 5 player, right? I mean, in Vries, right? Correct.
We didn't quite have Vries that high in the preseason, and Ethan Salas, we didn't have. I mean, there was an argument over who was the best prospect, but since then, Salas hasn't played much because of a back injury, and now Vries is out of the organization.
Can I go through this with you though? Is it so that's one of the teams that you focus on, the Padres. So you're very familiar with them. When I talk about AJ Preller and him making all these deals, you mentioned the Juan Soto deal. This isn't the first time he's done this. My point is that he's done this for a few years now, and yet they still land with a good team. This is the thing, and they still land with prospects that you can trade for other things. I don't know how many years it's been like this, but it seems like for a long time that we keep saying that this keeps happening, this keeps happening. And what I'm trying to tie myself into knots to articulate is is using this as the example of it's okay to trade these guys to stay in contention because you'll find the next wave of guys to trade. Then you'll find the next wave of guys to trade. You tell me if
Right.
I'm wrong or right.
No, you have to have that internal confidence, and they definitely do. That, like somebody like Miguel Mendez, for example, is somebody who wasn't a top 30 guy now. I think he's number 4 or 5 on our list. He's throwing upper 90s. They've developed him into a really quality starting pitcher prospect. They didn't end up trading him. Of all the guys they traded, they didn't trade him. But they have confidence that they can go and find the next Miguel Mendez and develop that type. They could turn Humberto Cruz, who has been like kind of iffy so far in single A ball, but they really believe in the pitchability. Maybe he's a top 100 guy a year from now. Cruz Schoolcraft, who they drafted in the first round, he's right on the cusp of the top 100 himself. I mean, he's a 6'8" lefty who can really throw the ball and played a lot as a hitter in high school. And a lot of scouts think he's going to take off now that he's focused on pitching. All you have to have is like enough prospects to make a trade. You don't have to have a full top 30 to be like, oh, we can go and pull off a blockbuster. As long as you have the right pieces, you can always keep that wheel turning. And the Padres believe that they can just get enough. They don't need to be top 15 because they have Fernando Tatis Jr., Jackson Merrill, Manny Machado. They have like the individual guys in place at the big league level. Just to complement those, they just need enough prospects, and they think they can get there year in and year out.
Yeah, it's a good point by you. It's a good point not only because you're agreeing with me, but but I just think that you talked about the Soto deal, and one thing I've said this about Juan Soto. No team has done a deal involving Juan Soto that haven't felt pretty good about that Juan Soto deal. Whether you're getting Juan Soto or whether you're giving up Juan Soto. And the Padres are the perfect example of that. They traded for Juan Soto, gave up, as you mentioned, a really huge haul, and James Wood and C.J. Abrams and Mackenzie Gore. But also, they got Juan Soto for a little bit, and then they traded him. And you know what? They got good players back for Juan Soto. And the Yankees, right. The Yankees like what they got for Juan Soto. They went to the World Series. What I'm saying is Juan Soto is good for business. Congratulations, Juan Soto.
Hot take. That Juan Soto is a good baseball player.
Better. All right, let's do the top 5 thing for the trade deadline. What do you got at number 5?
At number 5, we have Tyler Locklear. We did a ranking on deadline day at the end of the day after all of this.
Which, by the way, I don't know how that post does for you analytically. But for me, I would imagine it's probably one of your guys' most popular posts.
Yeah, there's a reason why we do it year in and year out. And, as much as it drives me crazy at the end of the day, I think I left the office at maybe 1 in the morning after showing up very early because you never knew what was going to happen. It was a long day, but you do it because we want people to have certain expectations.
Yeah.
Who got moved and should you feel good about the return? Should you not feel good about the return? So we'll start at number 5 here. That's Tyler Locklear, who goes from the Seattle Mariners to the Arizona Diamondbacks in the Eugenio Suarez trade, which happened before deadline day earlier in the week. But Tyler Locklear, he is a right-handed hitting, right-handed throwing first baseman. That kind of caps his ceiling a little bit, but he's got tremendous power. It was at the time of the trade, 19 homers in 70 games with AAA Tacoma. And it worked out pretty well for Arizona because they had traded Josh Naylor earlier in the week. So they had an opening at first base. You plug in Locklear, his power is going to play there really well. Now, I thought Suarez was going to bring back a top 100 prospect. Locklear is not that for us. But getting somebody who can hold down your position for the long term is a pretty good deal. Getting somebody who is major league ready over maybe a top 100 prospect who's 18, 19 years old, and there's a wider variance on what could happen. I think that's something that they were prioritizing there. Number 4 is Cal Steven, who went from the Toronto Blue Jays to the Cleveland Guardians. Cal Steven, one of the best examples of what has been a breakout year for Blue Jays pitching. They had a really difficult 2024, tons of injuries up and down the system. Guys just weren't pitching that often. The ones they were excited about weren't out there. So they hired somebody new. They brought in Justin Lair. And I'm not going to put it entirely on his shoulders, but they've had a lot of breakout arms this year, and Cal Steven was certainly one of them. He was a second-round pick out of Mississippi State in 2024. The fastball is 92 to 94, but it gets 20 inches of ride, so it plays exceptionally well. And he's got an 83, 85 mile an hour changeup that works. There's some belief in the game that he's trending towards top 100 status. So getting him for Shane Bieber for Cleveland is a pretty good get. And we know Cleveland traditionally develops arms really well. So we'll see if he can take off from there. He's somebody at Double A right now. Number 3 is Mick Abel.
One second. Let me stop real quick about that.
Yeah.
That trade fascinates me. It's such a wild card of a trade. Like it really is. And so when you look at that deal, and we all know that starting pitching, not a lot of it moved for a reason because it's very difficult, and high-end starting pitching is really, really hard to get at the deadline. So the Bieber thing was really intriguing because you're sort of threading the needle where, yeah, he could be a high-end guy, but you're taking a chance. You're taking a fairly big chance because he hadn't pitched this year. He's only had minor league rehab outings. But even to get that guy, I believe it's only for a couple months. I think it's a player option for next year. I'm not positive. I should check that.
I believe that's true.
Yeah. And I just interviewed Shane Bieber. I should know this. But it's just to get that guy. It shows you how much starting pitching costs. That like you're identifying the fourth best guy who was traded, and he was traded for a guy who hasn't pitched this year, who potentially is only there for a few months. Like, but still, like that's how much it costs to do business. And I just think everything about this trade, we're going to look back a year from now and say, wow, the Blue Jays really got the missing piece, or wow, the Blue Jays really overpaid because Cal Steven really has taken off, where he wasn't, to all your point, like maybe he wasn't viewed as that guy, but much like, kind of like Cole Reagan's, the Aroldis Chapman deal, right? Like this underperforming first round pick that all of a sudden takes off. I just find it a really interesting trade.
I actually found it interesting from the Steven side because it's one of those opportunities where, yes, his stock is clearly going up, but he's at Double A. He hasn't really proven himself in the upper minors yet. So the Blue Jays, I don't want to say are cutting bait, but they're like trading him when his value's on the way up, but it could fall apart at Triple A. Like the jump between Double A and Triple A right now for pitchers because of the Major League ball is sizable. We could find out that like Cal Steven's fastball doesn't ride the same way with the MLB ball, and his stock tanks a little bit. But at the same time, the Guardians are getting him at Double A, where now they can finish off his development the way they see fit. They may see some tweaks in him that they can unlock even better. Whereas if they got him where he already had some major league experience, he's more or less a finished product, and what you see is what you get. So it's like fascinating from both sides to see when the Jays were willing to let go of Steven and when the Guardians are willing to get him.
Yeah, again, it's all the points that you point out about Stevens is really important because the trade doesn't get made. There are so many things. I keep saying this. There's so many things about the trade, including, by the way, that I'm not convinced that there's a lot of organizations that are able to make this Bieber trade other than the Toronto Blue Jays, because basically those two front offices are like family, right? I mean, you hear a lot about how difficult it is to trade with Cleveland. It just is. And so whether it's like-minded thinking, whatever it is, but I think that's a big part of it too. So there you go. All right.
No, that's a good point.
Number 3.
Number 3 is Mick Abel. Kind of what I was just saying about Cal Steven, in that Mick Abel is somebody with major league experience. It's been uneven major league experience to this point. He went from the Phillies to the Twins in the Yohan Duran trade. But Mick Abel, somebody who at one point this season outdueled Paul Skeens in a major league start. And then there were other starts where he had one against the Red Sox, I believe, where it looked like he was maybe tipping his pitches. That there was some chatter of like, oh, if he's moving his hands this way, it's obviously going to be a breaking ball. I saw him in AAA Lehigh Valley just before the deadline. And he was moving like a machine. I mean, his fastball velocity is back up to 96. He's got a low 80s curve and a mid 80s slider. And depending on the day, one can be better than the other, but both can be really good pitches. And he's got that major league experience. So if you're the Twins, right now, I think he's at AAA. They're not really pushing him aggressively, and they also got Taj Bradley, who's not a prospect, but they've beefed up their pitching core a little bit. You trade your all-world closer, but you get somebody who could be in your rotation for 5-6 years. That's a pretty good get, and it's not just Abel, right? They also got the number 2 guy on our list in Eduardo Tait, who's somebody who hits absolute rockets as a catcher, batting from the left side.
Say his last name again.
It is Tait. It's not Tate.
No, I know. That's why we're here to educate, inform, enlighten, and entertain. And you just did all the above by saying this guy's name the right way.
And I do that because I have been made a fool myself in that way. I went to Phillies camp in 2024 as he was coming stateside, and I was like, so this Eduardo Tate guy looks really good. And they were just like, that's not how you say it. And I was like, thank you. I will never say it that way again. Eduardo Tait. He's a backstop, just reached high A, super young. Can the receiving use work? Of course it can. He's probably a single A catcher right now, but he's at least a high A hitter. I mean, it's just absolute rockets from the left side. The exit velocity data in the Florida State League was really, really good. He's somebody who could have plus power down the line, which is extremely valuable if you plug that in behind the plate. So we'll see how things go again, going back to what I was saying before about Cal Steven. The Twins are getting him exceptionally early in his development, so they'll have a lot of work to do with him, trying to coax out as much as they can on the defensive side. But I think the offensive side is really exciting for Eduardo Tait. And then number 1.
Well, wait, before you get to number 1.
Sure.
Very excited about number 1. But I do want to ask you about you because you just listed the 2 guys in a row who was in the Duran trade. And did you feel so? We talk about controllable starters, why they aren't dealt. Well, we haven't talked about it, but I will talk about it. Once again, not really dealt. 2 years ago, Dylan Cease not dealt. Last year, Garrett Crochet not dealt. This year, Joe Ryan not dealt. Why? Because the cost is crazy, and it just gets crazier. But there was a guy who plays a different position under control for a couple of years in Duran, who is amongst the best of the best, who was dealt. And like you said, with Abel and Tait, I feel like good just saying that. I feel like
I know, right?
I mispronounced so many things. Did you feel like that was what was your take when you hear about that package for a controllable reliever? Like, so this is the thing, right? We have these 2 really, really high-end controllable relievers who were dealt in Mason Miller and Duran. I guess the first question, I'm sort of backing myself into asking this, which do you think got the better deal?
Ooh. Well, I would rather have the guy we ranked number 1 out of any of them, obviously. Yeah. There's a lot to dream on there. The Twins got a lot of diversity back in that. No, I'm going to stick with what the A's got.
Okay. All right. Well, then we're going to get to that.
For Miller was better.
All right. Yeah. So to stick with Duran, were you surprised about the haul that Abel and Tait for Duran? What did you think that's about right?
I thought that was about right. I mean, my initial reaction was Dave Dombrowski's at it again, right? Like Dave Dombrowski, as much as AJ Preller we talk about is willing to trade prospects and is always wheeling and dealing, Dave Dombrowski might be a little bit more calculated, but like he's willing to move younger talent if it's going to help the big league team immediately. And adding Duran, not just for the closer entrance music, as badass as that was in Philadelphia, and how that upped the vibe on a team that just thrives on vibes the last few years. But adding him to the back of that bullpen makes that team exceptionally dangerous. And we're seeing them pull away in the NL East. But you thought, like, okay, if he's going to get moved, it's going to cost a couple high-end prospects. I don't think Tait's not necessarily like super high-end, but he's really good. And Abel is somebody, he slipped out of the top 100 for us when we just did our update, but like right on the cusp and with major league experience, that's a pretty high price for a guy who's only going to pitch 1 inning at a time. But he's going to be really, really good at it. And I'm sure the Twins were asking a lot, and the Phillies were like, listen, he's our guy. We want him at the back of the bullpen. This is going to help us immediately. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
And if we finally get that world championship with him on the mound, none of this matters.
Well, it almost feels like, with Mason Miller with Padres, it was almost like a luxury item. But actually, when you see them play now, you're like, okay, this is how they separate themselves. Like their bullpen is insane. Like this is we have decent starting pitching, but this is how we separate ourselves. With the Phillies, this is literally the last piece of what we think can be a pretty good puzzle. Like there was no other room for interpretation about what the Phillies, who are already a really good team, needed, and that was that type of player. So yeah. And by the way, Mick Abel, every time I hear his name, I think the 2020 draft is really interesting to me, Sam, because we were sitting around doing nothing, right? So I probably paid more attention to that draft than most because we're just looking for something to do. And Mick Abel was a guy who was always interesting to me. And the other guy was Pete Crow Armstrong, who was always interesting to me. And they went only a few picks away from each other. So Mick Abel went number 15. Pete Crow Armstrong went number 19. But I think I would love to go back. I think it's going to be it already is a fascinating exercise to go back and to really break down that 2020 draft because of how warped the scouting system was when it. And you look at it, really, it's kind of been rough results for that first round, really. I mean,
Torkelson going first has been such a roller coaster, right? Like there have been times when I thought it was time to give up on Spencer Torkelson. There have been times when I thought, man, this guy's an all-star. He's figuring things out. He's a piece of a good Tigers team, but like, should you normally take a right-handed throwing first baseman first overall? No, but he felt like the surest thing, and even that's not been a sure.
Yeah, Torkelson, Kjerstad, Max Meyer, Asa Lacy, who hasn't made it to the majors, Austin Martin, Emerson Hancock, Nick Gonzalez, Robert Hassel III, Zach Veen, Reed Detmers. Now you get to Crochet. Okay, we're going to redraft this. Crochet goes number 1, right? Tell me if I'm wrong. Austin Hendrick, Patrick Bailey. I mean, they're good, some good players, but
right.
Yeah. By this time,
yeah.
we should have identified like who's going to be the star players. That's what I'm saying.
That would be a fascinating redraft. Would you take PCA or Garrett Crochet?
Ooh, that's a good one.
There are other names you could throw in there, like Spencer Strider before all the injuries would probably be in that conversation, and Mason Wynn, I think, still has some upside for the Cardinals. But yeah, that would be an interesting one. Who goes first overall if you knew what you knew today? That's one thing I think this class is affected by, though, is that they lost out on a normal minor league season in 2021. It happened, but it was weird. And they missed out on a whole bunch of high school and college games in the spring. I wonder how much that affects like what they've developed into since then.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like we said, leading up to the draft, you have months of inactivity. You don't have, and we have plenty of examples of guys who have taken off in those months. Like heck, I'm very PG rated today. Heck, Sam. I mean, I may have told you, like, we had Ben Sherrington on the podcast last year, and we were talking about the Skeens draft. He's like, in February and March, we were going to take a position player. I mean, think about that. Think about if COVID happened. Dylan Cruz, Congratulations.
Wyatt Langford,
Wyatt Langford.
Or just even this year's draft, like Jace Lavalette, who ends up going to the Guardians late in the first half. And a lot of people thought he could be a first overall pick, and then had serious hit tool questions. A lot of these issues pop up in the spring.
All right. Well, we'll do the 30 for 30 on the 2020 draft. All right. So you already tipped your hand. Number 1, go ahead.
Yeah, number 1's Leo Vries, who goes from the San Diego Padres to the Oakland to the Athletics, the West Sacramento Athletics, I guess, as it were. And that's fascinating from many different ways. In that, it always felt like I was having conversations with people with the Padres just to get some re-rank stuff in order. They said to me, actually, I was in this very room when this happened. It's kind of a flashback for me right now. I think we're going to be buyers. And I'm like, no, you guys buyers at the deadline? And they're like, yeah, we think so. And I was just like, okay, cool, thanks. And I was like, but you guys wouldn't get rid of DeVries? And they're like, nah, I don't think so. Like, that's probably the guy we have that's untouchable. Coming into the year, the untouchables were DeVries and Salas. And now even Salas, with a back injury, the rest of the industry is kind of shrugging. And doesn't know what to make of that guy. Vries, at least, is somebody at high A who's run hot and cold this year, admittedly, but he's still extremely young. He's a switch hitter, plays shortstop. Some people think he might have to move to second or third base. I think he still has enough athleticism at short. I think we get lost in just how young he is. The fact that he's been at high A all year at 18 years old. We've talked about him on the show before, Rob. Jesus Made with the Milwaukee Brewers, and the excitement for him. He was signed at the same time as Vries. Like Made's been in the Dominican Summer League. He's been at single A. Now he's at high A. Vries, everything he's played in has been in full season ball. And he's played in the Arizona Fall League. He feels like he's a 21-year-old. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes. But a switch hitter can show some pop, can show the ability to hit for average, can really throw the ball. I remember there was a video out in the spring where Manny Machado, ahead of the spring breakout game, was breaking down Leo Vries' game. And I think he was trying to pump his tires, but he was like, oh, it's a 70 or 80 arm. I'm like, all right, I don't know about that. But it's at least above average to plus arm strength, which means if he has to move over to third base, he'll handle that fine. You just don't see guys like this with this upside traded. And we actually put together a piece about that, of like the highest ranked prospects ever traded in the MLB Pipeline era. You have to go back to a deal you remember well, Rob. Yohan Moncada to the White Sox for Chris Sale. Didn't work out exceptionally well for the Chicago White Sox. Worked out really well for the Boston Red Sox. But you just don't see the caliber of this prospect traded because people value having a superstar in your organization. I think AJ Preller was doing some math and being like, well, Leo Vries is probably 2 years away. By the time he's up, we're going to have payroll constraints. We're going to have Manny Machado 2 years older. It's going to be tougher to extend this window to include Leo Vries. Let's get somebody, Mason Miller, who can pitch this year for us, can pitch exceptionally well, can pitch important innings in October and potentially November. And we have him for a long term. This is not a rental. We are not just giving this up for a few months. We are getting maybe the best reliever in baseball for a long time. So it's just a fascinating trade. It sounds like there's been some reporting out there that like AJ Preller was realizing the chip he had in Leo Vries and was asking, what can I get for him if I am willing to trade him because he doesn't fit in this window? But getting Mason Miller and JP Sears, who they've sent down to AAA, but again, another controllable relief arm, that's a pretty good return.
Who are some of the other names? You mentioned Moncada. Who are some of the other tippity top?
Ooh. Will Myers, if you want to go way back.
Oh, James Shields, right?
Yeah, he was traded when he was incredibly highly ranked.
I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you one that was a little bit before your time. Andy Marte.
Oh, yeah.
So Andy Marte, I believe, was the number one prospect overall. He was dealt for I always get it mixed up. It was the Coco Crisp deal, I think.
Because he was with the Red Sox for like a hot second and then flipped, right?
Flipped, yeah. So, when you think of Andy Marte, and R.I.P. to Andy, but it's one of the things I always think about was he came from the Braves, and the Braves are really, really, really good about pumping up their prospects, and and also then selling on the right guys. John Sherholtz was excellent at this. And I mean, Andy Marte, number one prospect. And I kind of wonder now if you can even do that to that level. I mean, I don't know if it was a different time. Obviously, there's more information now. Obviously, there's more opinions now. There's more looks at guys now. There's all of it. You're not just relying on one thing. You're relying on 100 things. I don't know. But we've probably talked about this in the past where there are some organizations who are just really, really good about really pumping guys up who they're not necessarily think that they're as good as everyone's saying they are, So.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I don't think that's necessarily the case here with Vries, but yeah, I mean, with the fact that we have more data than just a triple slash line. I mean, I'm sure at that point it was just Andy Marte is super young. Here's how he's performed to this point. It's easy to see how it goes. I would love to go back. I'm sure this doesn't actually exist, but like, what was his 90th percentile exit velocity? What was his chase rate? What they were going off scouting reports. I mean, this makes it sound like it's 34 years ago. It was not that long ago. I remember that trade very vividly. But the amount of measurables we have on prospects now and the deeper understanding we have of the developmental curve usually makes these trades harder to pull off, because people see the value in getting, like you were saying before, the trades that didn't happen at last year's trade deadline with Garrett Crochet, the names that were being bandied about. The Red Sox, if they were interested, would it have costed a Roman Anthony or Marcelo Meyer? It probably would have. And they were like, no, these are guys we see being close to the major leagues and somebody who can help us for a long time. And who would you rather? I mean, they got Garrett Crochet eventually. So it doesn't really matter.
Okay. So I want to talk quickly about that. And by the way, Marte was traded by the Braves to the Red Sox for Edgar Renteria. And then the Red Sox flipped. Traded by the to the Red, and then they flipped him from the Coco Crisp deal. So anyway, not that anyone cares, but I do. So we talk about these deals. Crochet, the White Sox aren't trading last year because they're saying, hey, you know what? You want to trade Roman Anthony, Marcelo, whatever? Okay, just keep them coming, keep the names coming. But we're gonna. In that case, I think it was like, we want this, and if we get this, we're going to trade for that. We'll trade this guy. But it's such a crazy level of prospect, they were never going to get there. The Red Sox approach to Joe Ryan this year was really interesting to me, Sam, because they had pushed their chips to the middle of the table and saying, this is what we need. This is what we have to get. A starting pitcher who is going to pitch in the postseason. So they identify this guy. And from what I understand, in that last hour, it was, all right, Minnesota, Peyton Tolley and either Garcia, just Nixon Garcia, or I always forget his name. Who's the other top prospect for the Red Sox?
Franklin Arias. So Peyton Tolley, one of these two guys, and then some other guys from your top 10 prospect list, like David Sandlin or whatever. In other words, a deal that was going to rival what they gave up for Crochet, certainly. And Minnesota was just like, they, according to the Red Sox, they didn't even respond, but they were like, okay, that's fine. But we know we don't have to trade Joe Ryan right now. We also know when we get to the offseason, it's not just going to be maybe the Red Sox and Cubs who are in on this guy. There's going to be more teams in on this guy. So all of this was an example, once again, of why those guys aren't traded. Right.
So, yeah.
Right, yeah. You just think of the amount of teams that could use starting pitching in the offseason. I mean, right now you're just truncated to competitive teams in 2025. You open that up to the offseason, everybody should want Joe Ryan if he's available. Do they have the pieces to trade for him? That's a separate discussion. But everybody should at least put in a call.
Yeah.
What from us would it take to get this guy? And yeah, I mean, it's fascinating that the Red Sox were willing to put in those pieces, and especially with Peyton Tolley now being at AAA and being talked about as a potential bullpen arm down the stretch. He's still useful, but he's not Joe Ryan. He wouldn't be a starting pitcher right away, and he doesn't have that major league track record.
No. All right. Well, you've been very generous with your time once again. I do want to ask you which farm system. So I know the answer because you just came out with your excellent article about re-ranking the farm systems. And Minnesota went to number 2, correct? Minnesota?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's what I'm going to ask you. Which farm system, when you're doing the re-ranking of these farm systems, Minnesota took the biggest jump? Would that be fair to say?
I believe one of the biggest jumps in the top 10. I think the Giants actually took the biggest jump overall, but they were more in the middle of the pack, so it's not like it stands out all that much. But they went from 28 to 18.
But I want to ask you about the cautionary tale team. Like, what is the cautionary tale about we think that our farm system's going this way and then some bad performances send it the other way? I have a team in mind. I don't know if you're going to mention this team, but go ahead.
Ooh. Oh, mine would be the Tampa Bay Rays.
That's the one. That's the
oh,
one.
nice. Look at this.
Yeah.
We did not coordinate that. For everybody listening at home,
It's
we did not coordinate that whatsoever.
Simpatico. Here we go.
Yeah. The Tampa Bay Rays, we still have in the top 10 because they are exceptionally deep. Like if you go to their 20s, 20 to 30 range, there's still a lot to like there in a way that typically you fall off. But the bloom is off the rose of like the really top prospects. Carson Williams, you always hoped would maybe fix his strikeout issues to this point, and it hasn't quite happened. Now he's gotten better in recent months, but he's not looking like a top 10 prospect anymore. Xavier Isaac has dealt with wrist issues this season. Hasn't played the field, hasn't played in a while. In as much as I love his power, the bat hasn't quite worked at AA the way you would hope, so he fell off the top 100. Trey Morgan, an exceptional fielder at first base, but he needs to have a really good hit tool, and that hasn't been up to snuff at AAA because he doesn't have a ton of power for first base. So he's off the top 100. Braden Taylor was somebody we thought was a jack of all trades type on the infield, but he's now repeating AA. His OPS or his WRC plus is below 75, I want to say, for that level. So it's like if you're supposed to do everything well, but you're not hitting well, you're not hitting for power, you're not making contact, that deflates the talent there as well. So there's still I like their younger pitching arms. Jose Urbina stands out, Santiago Suarez, Trevor Harrison. I like the first round pick they made this year in Daniel Pierce, but this is not the Tampa Bay Rays system that we've come to know over the last few years, which is we have a lot of top 100 guys, and then there's going to be a ton to like below that as well.
All right. See, good. I feel better about myself. Felt better about myself before you said it, and now I feel even better about you after you've talked a little bit. All right. Well, I hope you get a month-long vacation.
There's still a month of minor league baseball to go, as much as I would like.
I know.
To avoid it. But then we got Arizona Fall League right around the corner. Which is always exciting too. So.
Oh my goodness. I maybe I'll go this year. Last time I was in Arizona that time of year, I was almost attacked by a pack of javelinas. You know
man.
You know what javelinas are?
Oh, of course, yeah. One of the teams down there is the Peoria Javelinas.
Yeah, well, I was outside. I was staying at Joe Kelly's house, and the Ring camera caught how I nearly missed death by javelina. So that's why when I think Arizona Fall League, I will forever think about that. All right, Sam. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rob.